What's up guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Quick Flicks. Today we are covering Disturbia, directed by DJ Caruso, which is a pretty sick name I must add, releasing in 2007. Disturbia stars younger Shia LaBeouf at just 19 years old. Crazy that 2007 was 15 years ago. Shia plays Kale, a teenager on house arrest who gets suspicious of his neighbor after seeing that his vehicle matches the description of a murder suspect. Are his suspicions correct? I have no freaking clue. Let's hop into the movie and find out. The movie opens up with our main protagonist, Kel, doing some fishing with his dad, Daniel. They take a break, sharing a Coke together, and overall, having a great time. On the way home, while Daniel is bragging to Kel's mom about how he did some great fishing, a random SUV cuts them off, but quickly swerves out of the way and dodges a broken down car. Not giving Kel enough time to react, they run into it and roll over. The two quickly check on each other to ensure they are okay, when a random truck appears, not seeing them in time, and running into Daniel's side. Kel, all banged up, gets out of the car and goes to help his dad, but unfortunately, he doesn't make it. Aw, sad. This leads into a title card. 1 year later, Kel is asleep in Spanish class when his teacher wakes him up and asks him to do his final speech of the year in, of course, Espanol. I hope my pronunciation was at least okay. Much like myself in Spanish class, Kel struggles and can't really find the right words to put together. His teacher gets annoyed and goes overboard, mentioning how his father would be disappointed. Kel has enough of it and punches him in the face. He of course has to face the consequences, but the judge is understanding of his situation and only gives him 3 months house arrest rather than a jail sentence. The next day, Detective Parker arrives at his house, strapping him up with his new nifty ankle bracelet. She informs him that it'll immediately alert authorities if he steps out of his boundaries for more than 10 seconds. After the info dump, they head on out. When Kel figures out Officer Gutierrez is in fact his teacher's cousin, so he'll probably have it out for him. However, Kel isn't worried about his punishment, as he can just play Tom Clancy's Advanced Warfighter all day. Never mind. Well, at least he can buy some music on iTunes. That's unfortunate. His mom comes in, and you can tell there's some tension between them lately. She lets him know that she canceled all of his online subscriptions, and even cuts his TV power plug, so he can get up and be a bit more productive around the house. As she leaves for work, we get a montage of Kel being a stereotypical slobby teenager, half bootying all of his chores around the house. After all that hard work, he takes a nap, but is quickly awoken to the sounds of his newest neighbors moving in next door. One of them happens to catch his eye quite quickly. His doorbell suddenly rings. Running to open it, he sees a bag of flaming dog poop, and the kids who plotted it laughing. He begins chasing them, when one of them reminds him he's under house arrest. He quickly heads back home, barely making it in time, or so he thought. Definitely not a good first impression on her parents' homes. Luckily for Kel, he gets one freebie. Not wanting to take any more chances, he sets up some strings as boundaries to ensure he won't step out too far. While doing so, he notices the new girl arriving home, so he quickly heads up to his dad's old office and creepily watches her through the window. He once again hears a knock at the door and goes to answer it to see his good friend, Ronnie, played by Aaron Yu. Yu actually plays Chewie in the Friday the 13th remake, released in 2009, as well as the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, released in 2010. And if you're wondering, I plan on covering both franchises sometime soon. Kel gives Ronnie a good look at the neighborhood. First is Robert Turner, a quiet old man who seems to keep to himself. Then there's the kids that like to prank Kel. And lastly, the new neighbor lady. This time, she's in the pool, arousing these fools. Later into the day, Kel is just swinging on the porch with not much to do. That is until the neighbor girl once again pulls into her driveway. He quickly heads to the mailbox, pretending to struggle with grabbing the mail to get her attention. This actually works, and she helps him out, and introduces herself for the first time as Ashley. Later that night, while Kel is watching the news, he overhears about an unsolved missing persons case, and that the suspect was driving a 1960s Ford Mustang with a dent on the left side. An alarm on his phone suddenly goes off, letting him know it's time to go watch Ashley do her nightly stretching routine. Kel's a weird guy. After her dad comes in and gets mad at her for unknown reasons, he diverts his attention to his other neighbor, Robert, who seems a bit suspicious due to his 1960s Stang with a dent on the left side, this concerning Kel a bit. The next morning, morning, he takes a look at the paper that includes a bit more info on the missing woman case. He decides to do some investigating with Ronnie. They find out that the circumstances surrounding the missing woman's disappearance are quite similar to several murder kidnappings in Austin just 3 years prior. They never caught the guy, but they did find 7 bodies in the house where the killer was staying, but with no traces to him. They quickly lose interest, however, when Ashley goes swimming. It doesn't last long though. When she notices them staring, they hide in embarrassment. When they hear the doorbell ring, being the nervous teenagers that they are, they panic, but eventually open the door to see Ashley. She pretty much invites herself in, Kel obviously having no issues with that. She makes her way to his messy room that Kel and Ronnie try quickly picking up. When she finds the binoculars that he's been using to look at everyone, they quickly cover up the fact that he was watching her by letting her in on their suspicious neighbor, Robert, telling her they think he may be a murderer. They tell her about the Mustang, but minutes later, Robert drives out of the garage with a pristine, undented Mustang, baffling Kel. While Kel is being weird and smelling her hair like Frodo in The Faculty, Ashley mentions a longhorn skull hanging up in his garage, Kel immediately making the connection to the similar string of murders in Texas. Since, you know, Texas, longhorns, yeah. You get it. Ashley gets interested and decides to hang around and help him investigate. After some hours, Ronnie passes out from a pizza overdose, giving Kel and Ashley alone time. She paints some hearts on his ankle bracelet and kinda start flirting. When Robert arrives home with a little firecracker of his own, the two spy on them having some wine and a dance. But after a few minutes pass, they notice Robert holding a knife and creeping up behind the woman. They panic for a second, but feel relieved when he was just cutting off the tag on the woman's dress. The two look at each other, about to smooch, when Ronnie interrupts.
Do something new? You're... yeah.
They get ready to smooch once more, but get interrupted by a phone call from her mom, demanding that she get home. Kel walks her on back, about to smooch again, but leaves him hanging. He heads back home to see the prankster kids watching a word I can't really say on YouTube, or they might get mad at me, but it rhymes with corn, so hopefully you understand what it is. But once again gets his attention diverted to Robert's house when he notices the woman running around, attempting to escape. He accidentally takes a photo with a flash on, now getting the attention of Robert. Kel quickly calls Ronnie to let him know about the situation, but quickly stops talking as he sees the woman casually walking out of the house and back to her car. The next morning, Kel wakes up and heads downstairs to get breakfast when he gets spooked by Robert being in his house. He quickly finds out that his mom invited him over due to his generosity in helping her fix a flat tire. They converse back and forth a bit, where you can definitely feel some tension building in the room. Kel heads upstairs where Ashley is awaiting him. He explains the entire situation to her, but she calms him down, saying he's overthinking everything. She then gets ready to leave, telling Kel that she's throwing a party tonight, and she has to get ready, this making him a bit jealous. Later that night, he of course watches her at the party, seeing a dude hugging her. He doesn't like that very much, and decides to set up his stereo and blast some Loving You by Tanisha Kelly. I hope I pronounced her name correctly. If I didn't, let me know down below. Definitely a bop. Ashley gets quite upset and embarrassed as everyone at the party laughs. She crawls through a window and snatches his iPod, threatening to leave the boundaries of the house if he doesn't stop. They're both a bit mad at each other, but Kel ends up spilling his heart out to her. She doesn't know whether to think he's the creepiest guy ever or the sweetest, but goes with the latter. The two then share in a big ol' smooch. They get ready to do some dirty stuff when Ashley notices Robert dragging some suspicious looking bags into his garage. They decide to get to the bottom of this the next morning, sending Ashley to spy on Robert at the hardware store, while Ronnie gets the garage code to his house. Ashley eventually loses sight of Robert and gets ready to leave when he stops her. At first, he's casual, but then grabs her keys out of the ignition and gets into the car to have a serious talk. He informs her that he knows she and her friends are spying on him. He asks her to please stop as he likes his privacy, but B's a bit creepy about it, then giving her the keys back and leaving. She gets back to Kel and Ronnie, where she explains everything that happened.
All he said was that he liked his privacy.
But think about that. Why does he want his privacy?
Maybe because people like their privacy? What? I'm a little confused by that question, Shia. Ashley insists that Robert's right, and they've officially gone too far. She pleads with them to stop investigating and spying on him, then leaving and going home for her parents' anniversary. Later that night, Kale constructs a device that allows them to view what his camera records on his TV at home. Ronnie suddenly comes banging on his door, telling him that he left his phone in Robert's car. Panicking, Kale Kel sends him over there with the camera, and he heads in through the garage. Ronnie informs him of a terrible odor and a bag with blood seeping out of it. While he's investigating, the garage door suddenly closes, and Ronnie begins to yell and run for his life before the camera goes to static. Cale, not giving two hecks about his ankle bracelet, heads over there with a baseball bat, but as soon as he steps foot in the front door, the police arrive and handcuff him. Robert comes out, prompting Cale to tell the police about the situation. They find him somewhat convincing and decide to check out Robert's house, only to find that the bloody bag is a dead deer Robert supposedly ran over a few nights prior. The police let his mom know that Cale will have to appear in court the next morning due to his actions. She's quite disappointed and angry, but she attempts to get him off the hook by going over to Robert's house and apologizing, hoping he won't press charges. Meanwhile, Kel goes to his room, getting jump scared by Ronnie, who is pretending to be dead in his closet, obviously annoying Kel for what he just went through. He catches him up to speed, then shows Kel what all the camera captured when he was in Robert's house, and luckily, Kel notices something. He zooms in a few times on a certain frame, seeing a dead body preserved behind an air vent. At the same time, Robert knocks out his mom, then heading over to Kel's and stealthily hitting Ronnie over the head with a baseball bat. We then get a long-awaited fight scene between the two. After some battling, Kel runs out, attempting to leave the boundaries to trigger police attention, but Robert prevents him from doing so and knocks him out. He then ties him up and reveals his entire plan on how he's going to frame Kel. Taking too long to explain his plan, they hear Ashley call for him from downstairs. This distracts Robert just long enough for Kel to whack him in the face. He runs out to Ashley, who helps him fend off Robert, until Kel pushes him over the stairwell, falling down to the bottom floor. They then get in his bedroom and lock the door. Robert does a "here's Johnny," forcing the two to escape through the window and jump into Ashley's pool. Cale tells Ash to call the police, while he goes to Robert's house to find his mom. He arrives and comes across a secret room straight out of Saw. He finds the woman's belongings from earlier and realizes that Robert was pretending to be her to fake out Cale. Meanwhile, Officer Gutierrez shows up to the party, but Robert stealthily attacks him, breaking his neck. Back down at the basement, Cale makes his way through a weird maze thing. When he finally finds his mom tied up, he cuts the ropes, but Robert catches her from behind. He throws her against the wall and fights Kel. He pins him up against the wall, and just before killing him, Kel's mom stabs him in the leg with a screwdriver. Cale then taking the opportunity to grab the hedge shears and jam them bad boys into Robert's tummy. He pushes Robert through a broken floor into a puddle of water and corpses. Ew. The two then leave the house, happy to be alive. The next day, Detective Parker comes on over to take off Kel's ankle bracelet. Due to his good behavior, he immediately leaves the house and crosses the boundary into Ashley's yard, giving her a big ol' smooch. They then head upstairs and get some payback on the douche kids across the street, prank calling their parents, pretending to be the cable company, and ratting out that someone is watching, you know what, in the other room. They smile, laugh, and make out, feeling like they've won life. And the screen fades to black. Let me know what you guys thought of Disturbia. Did you like it? Hate it? Anything catch you off guard? Let me know down below. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.